The alien fleet had been observing Earth from the shadows for decades. They had watched humanity rise from the ashes of ancient civilizations, grow into a powerful species, and expand its reach beyond the stars. But despite their extensive surveillance, something about humanity had always puzzled them. The aliens could never quite understand why humans were so driven, so determined to fight, conquer, and survive against all odds. They had seen wars throughout history, bloody, destructive, and endless, and yet humanity seemed to thrive on conflict. It was as though their very existence was tied to destruction. On a routine mission, the alien commander, Zorath, received a strange report. It was a routine scan of Earth's atmosphere, something they did every year. But this time, there was something different. Something buried deep within the genetic makeup of humanity was emerging, something they had never anticipated. Zorath's heart raced as he read the findings. The data was clear. Humans were not just a product of natural evolution. There was something more to their origin. He immediately called for a meeting with his council. As the holographic projections of his most trusted advisors filled the room, Zorath shared the startling discovery. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of urgency in his words. "We have been monitoring this species for centuries," he said. "But this is not what we expected. Humanity is not a natural creation. They were made for something." The council was silent for a long moment. Then one of the advisors, Cora, spoke up. "What do you mean? What were they made for?" Zorath's fingers trembled as he scrolled through the data. "War," he replied. "The patterns in their history, their genetics, even their behavior, it's all pointing to one thing. Humanity was designed for conflict. They were engineered to fight, to destroy, to conquer." The room was filled with a mix of disbelief and shock. The idea that a species so young and fragile could have been created with such a singular purpose was unthinkable. The aliens had encountered many species over the centuries, but none had ever shown signs of being artificially designed for war. It was a chilling revelation. Cora's voice was sharp. "But why? Why would anyone create a species like that?" Zorath shook his head. "I don't know, but we need to know more. We can't just dismiss this. If what we're seeing is true, then humanity poses a danger to the entire galaxy." The Council immediately ordered a deeper investigation. Over the next few days, the alien fleet gathered more data, scouring ancient human records, examining genetic sequences, and analyzing every war ever fought on Earth. What they found was both astounding and terrifying. Human history was a constant cycle of war. From the earliest tribal conflicts to the global battles of the 20th century, humanity had always been at war. Even in times of peace, there was always a simmering tension beneath the surface, a readiness to fight. But it wasn't just the wars that caught the aliens' attention. It was the fact that every major conflict seemed to push humanity forward. Each war advanced their technology, improved their weapons, and made them stronger. It was as if they were evolving in response to conflict, becoming more efficient, more deadly, more capable with each new battle. The aliens dug deeper. They uncovered the secrets of humanity's genetic code. It wasn't just a coincidence that humans were so predisposed to violence. It was by design. Genetic markers for aggression, strength, and resilience were embedded within their DNA. Every human was born with the potential for war. The aliens couldn't explain how or why, but the evidence was irrefutable. Zorath sat alone in his command chamber, staring at the data. His mind raced with the implications of what they had discovered. He had always seen humanity as a primitive, reckless species, but he had never imagined they were capable of such a deep, dark purpose. The thought that Earth's entire history was a carefully crafted design for war sent shivers down his spine. But as the days passed and the investigation continued, the aliens began to uncover something even more disturbing. The humans didn't just fight because they had to, they fought because they wanted to. There was something deep inside them, something that drove them to seek conflict. The Alien Council had assumed that humanity's wars were a product of survival, of necessity. But now, it seemed that war was not just a part of their nature. It was their nature. Zorath called for another meeting, his mind filled with troubling thoughts. What if humanity's purpose is not just to fight among themselves, he said, his voice grave, but to fight others? What if their creators designed them to be the perfect soldiers, the perfect weapon, for a much larger war? The council exchanged uneasy glances. Cora was the first to speak. Are you suggesting that humanity is part of a larger plan? That they were created to be a tool for conquest? Zorath nodded slowly. Yes. And if that's true, we could be the next target. Earth is still a relatively young planet, but they are rapidly advancing. What happens when they realize their true purpose? What happens when they come for us? A heavy silence fell over the room. The aliens had never encountered a species like humanity before. There were many dangerous species in the galaxy, but none that was specifically engineered for war. The thought that Earth could one day rise to become a galactic power, driven by an insatiable desire for conquest, was terrifying. Zorath knew they had to act quickly. The alien fleet had always kept a watchful eye on Earth, but now it was clear that the stakes had changed. If humanity was truly built for war, they would need to be stopped before they could fulfill their destiny. But as Zorath looked out at the stars through the viewports of his ship, he couldn't help but wonder, was it too late? Would the aliens be able to stop a species that had been engineered for war since the beginning of time? Or was humanity's terrifying purpose already set in motion, and nothing could change it now? As the alien fleet prepared for a more direct approach to Earth, Zorath felt a growing sense of dread. They were no longer just observing. They were about to confront a species that had the potential to shake the very foundations of the galaxy. And as the fleet set course for Earth, the question on everyone's mind was clear. Would humanity's true purpose be their salvation or their doom? The investigation into humanity's origins deepened, and the more the aliens uncovered, the more unsettling the truth became. Zorath, the fleet commander, and his council were no longer merely intrigued by the humans' violent tendencies. They were horrified. The hidden layers of human history revealed a pattern far darker than anyone had expected. The aliens had once thought of humanity as a young, developing species, primitive, but not entirely without potential. Now they saw the truth. Humanity had been designed with a singular, terrifying purpose. Zorath sat in his command room, the data flashing across the holographic screens in front of him. His fingers moved with precision as he scrolled through records of ancient battles, advanced weapons, and technologies that had been developed over centuries. Each one seemed to confirm what they had feared. Human history wasn't just a series of conflicts. It was a blueprint for warfare. From the very beginning, humanity had been engineered to fight, to conquer, and to survive by any means necessary. The council gathered again to discuss the findings. Cora, who had always been a skeptic, looked shaken. "I still don't understand," she said, her voice quiet but filled with disbelief. "How could anyone create a species like this? Why would they do it?" Zorath stared at the glowing screens. "I don't know. But I believe we are witnessing something far beyond mere evolution. Humanity's entire existence, their wars, their advancements, their insatiable thirst for conflict, it all points to a deliberate design." The aliens dug deeper into human history. What they found was chilling. Every major conflict, every war, had been followed by an explosion of innovation. Humans didn't just fight for survival. They fought to improve. They built better weapons, stronger armor, more efficient armies. Every war seemed to push them forward, as though the bloodshed fueled their advancement. It was as if they were created to evolve only through destruction. Zorath found records of the First World War, a brutal conflict that had nearly wiped out humanity. But it was also during that war that the first breakthroughs in industrial technology and weapons were made. Then, the Second World War came, even more devastating, but once again, It spurred humanity to create even more powerful machines, more sophisticated bombs, and more efficient tactics. It was a cycle that repeated itself throughout history, with each conflict making humanity more dangerous, more capable of war. But it wasn't just the technology that disturbed the aliens. The genetic analysis was far more disturbing. The aliens found specific markers in the human genome, genetic traits for aggression, endurance, and physical strength, all precisely engineered. Humanity had been designed to survive in conflict, to thrive in situations where others might perish. They were the perfect soldiers, born to fight and conquer. The more the aliens examined human DNA, the clearer it became that there was no way this could be natural. There was someone, behind it all. Kora's voice broke through Zoroth's thoughts. Could this be the work of another species? A higher intelligence that created humanity for this purpose? Zoroth nodded slowly. It's possible. But if this is true, then humanity was never meant to be peaceful. They were created as a weapon, a tool for war. And now, we are witnessing the consequences of that creation. The Council discussed the implications of this discovery for hours, trying to make sense of it all. What could the aliens do with this knowledge? Humanity, though still primitive in many ways, had a terrifying potential. If left unchecked, they could become an unstoppable force. The question was no longer whether humanity would conquer other civilizations. It was whether they would conquer their own. Zoroth stood up, his thoughts racing. He felt a deep sense of unease. The galaxy was vast, and the aliens had faced many dangerous species, but none had ever been so specifically designed for war. What would happen if humanity realized their true purpose? What would they do when they understood that they were not just another species, but a weapon created to dominate the galaxy? As the days passed, the alien fleet continued its surveillance, studying human behavior with increasing concern. They watched as humanity made new discoveries, not in peaceful sciences, but in warfare. New bombs, new strategies, and new ways to destroy. The aliens could see that humanity's thirst for conflict was growing, not diminishing. They had already begun to explore space, and their weapons were becoming more sophisticated by the day. The human race was advancing far too quickly, and the aliens were beginning to realize they might not be ready for the consequences. The council met again, and this time, the mood was tense. Kora, ever the pragmatist, spoke first. We've seen enough. Humanity is a threat. We can't wait any longer. We need to stop them before they can reach the stars. Zoroth hesitated. He wasn't so sure. The aliens had always been cautious, observing before intervening, but now the stakes were much higher. The evidence was clear. Humanity was not like any other species they had encountered. Their violent nature, their drive to improve through destruction, it was all too much. But there was something else, something deeper that troubled Zoroth. What if we are wrong? He asked, his voice thoughtful. What if humanity's purpose is not just to fight, but to protect? What if, after all the wars, they will rise above their purpose and become something greater? We can't just destroy them without knowing for sure. Kora shot him a sharp look. And what if they're already too far gone? What if their true purpose is to conquer the galaxy? Can we really take that chance? Zoroth didn't respond. The question lingered in the air, heavier than any weapon. If humanity was truly a species designed for war, could they ever change? Could they ever overcome their inherent nature? Or would they be doomed to fulfill the dark purpose they were created for? As Zoroth turned to leave the meeting, he looked out into the stars. Earth seemed so small from where he stood, but the potential for destruction was overwhelming. Humanity's future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had been made for war, and the galaxy was about to feel the consequences. The aliens' decision was made. The fleet would descend on Earth. They would confront humanity, expose their true purpose, and see if there was any hope for change, or if humanity would continue down a path of destruction that would consume everything in its way. But even as Zoroth ordered the fleet to prepare for the final mission, He couldn't shake the thought that perhaps humanity's destiny had already been sealed long ago, and no matter how hard they tried, there might be no stopping them now. As the aliens set up their equipment, they began scanning the surrounding areas, picking up on strange human activities. The humans, though primitive in some ways, were far more advanced than the aliens had anticipated. They were already experimenting with technologies that could rival even the aliens' own. Advanced robotics, artificial intelligence, and deep space exploration were just the beginning. It was only a matter of time before they would be capable of leaving their solar system, bringing their violence and aggression to other worlds. But there was something even more concerning: humanity's leaders. Zorath and his team had studied their political systems, their military organizations, and their leaders. He had been impressed by the humans' ability to organize and strategize. Even more alarming was the unity with which they fought. When humans went to war, they did so as one. There was no hesitation, no moral qualms. They fought with a singular purpose, and that purpose was always the same: to win, no matter the cost. This was a mindset the aliens had not anticipated. If humanity ever turned that focused determination outward, they would be unstoppable. The alien commanders had gathered in a small chamber, discussing their next move. Cora, still uneasy about the fleet's mission, voiced her concerns. "Are we sure about this? We've been watching them for years. They're not like the other species we've encountered. They have something different, something dangerous. But can we really just destroy them?" Zorath's expression was unreadable. "We're not here to destroy them," he said coldly. "We're here to expose the truth. We need to make them understand what they've been created for, and we need to see if they can overcome it. If they can't, if they continue to pursue war as their sole purpose, then we have no choice." Cora nodded slowly, though her doubts remained. "And if they can't change?" "Then we prepare for the worst," Zorath replied, his voice grim. "If they are as dangerous as we believe, we can't allow them to spread their violence to the rest of the galaxy." The tension in the room was palpable. The decision had been made. Humanity's future would now be decided by the alien fleet. Zorath knew the risks. He knew that even if they succeeded in their mission, there was no guarantee that humanity would be willing to accept the truth. They might reject the idea of being created for war. They might fight back, just as they had done for centuries. But it was the only option. The aliens could no longer afford to wait. As the aliens prepared to meet with humanity, Zorath couldn't help but wonder. Was this truly the beginning of the end for humanity, or was there a chance, however small, that they could evolve into something more than the warriors they had been created to be? Could humanity be saved, or was the galaxy doomed to face the full force of a species built for war? The answer, Zorath knew, lay in the humans themselves. And whatever happened next would determine not just their future, but the future of the galaxy. The alien fleet had made their presence known. The moment had arrived for the confrontation. As Zorath and his officers stood on the surface of Earth, surrounded by the desolate landscape, they couldn't ignore the sense of impending danger. Despite the peaceful, almost serene appearance of the planet, the looming threat of humanity's destructive nature hung over them like a dark cloud. Every part of him wanted to believe that humanity could overcome the purpose they had been created for, that they could evolve into something greater than their war-driven existence. But deep down, Zorath knew the chances were slim. They had never encountered a species like humanity before. The command was clear. They had to expose the truth. Humanity had to be shown what they had been designed for and, more importantly, why it mattered. Zorath was prepared for resistance. He understood that the humans might reject the truth, that they might fight back against the revelation. But if humanity truly had the potential to change, the first step in that process was forcing them to confront the reality of their creation. The first contact with humanity was not the dramatic confrontation the aliens had feared. Instead, it was eerily quiet. A team of alien diplomats, chosen for their ability to communicate with lesser civilizations, approached the nearest human outpost. an old military research facility, long abandoned, but still housing some of the technology that had first put humans on the path toward galactic warfare. They set up a temporary station in the facility, carefully monitoring the signals they sent out to Earth's communication networks. It didn't take long for the humans to respond. Despite the peaceful appearance of Earth's surface, humanity's instinct for conflict was never far behind. Within hours, a group of human leaders, military commanders, scientists, and politicians arrived at the facility, prepared for the worst. They had detected the alien presence in Earth's orbit, and their immediate reaction had been to assume it was an attack. The aliens had expected this response, and Zorath stood alongside his advisors, ready for what was to come. The humans were cautious but not afraid. It seemed that for all their power and weapons, humanity still had an innate curiosity, a curiosity that led them to understand the unknown before reacting. This was something the aliens hadn't anticipated. Humanity's initial defensive posture shifted as the truth about the aliens' visit was revealed. The human leaders were skeptical at first. They had been lied to by their governments, manipulated by their military-industrial complex, and conditioned to believe they were masters of the universe. Could they really trust the words of these strange visitors? The alien fleet had prepared carefully for this moment. Zorath stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We are not here to destroy you," he began, his words broadcast to all those present. "We are here to reveal the truth about your creation, your purpose, and the future that awaits you if you continue down your current path." Humanity was not a natural creation, but a species designed for one singular purpose: war. The humans stood in stunned silence, the words taking time to sink in. There was a flicker of disbelief, then a murmur of panic. Some of the leaders exchanged uneasy glances, as though unsure whether to react with fear or anger. For centuries, humanity had believed that they were the architects of their destiny. To hear that their very existence had been crafted by an unknown force for the sole purpose of destruction was too much to process. Zorath continued, his voice unwavering. "You are not like other species we have encountered. You were engineered to fight, to conquer, to survive by any means necessary. Your history, your wars, and your technology are all the product of this design. But you must understand this. Your creators intended for you to be the perfect soldiers, the perfect weapon. What happens when you realize this? What happens when you recognize that your very nature is to fight, and that this is the fate you are bound to fulfill?" The humans were divided. Some began to argue amongst themselves, demanding proof, others struggling to understand the implications of what was being said. A few, however, looked strangely resigned. They had always known something wasn't right with their world, but this revelation was overwhelming. Could it be true? Could they really have been created for war? Their minds raced, trying to process everything they had heard. But deep inside, they could feel the truth beginning to surface. Perhaps, in their hearts, they had always known. General Anderson, a hardened military leader with years of combat experience, was the first to speak. "You're saying we've been bred to fight, that everything we've done, every war, every weapon we've built, has been part of some plan?" His voice was filled with anger and disbelief. No, I refuse to believe that. We are human. We can choose our own destiny." Zorath remained calm. "Choice is not something you have been allowed. Your purpose has already been set, and it is only through the realization of this truth that you may begin to break free. But be warned, humanity's wars are far from over. The truth is clear. You are the product of a design that will ultimately lead you to destroy yourselves, or the galaxy." Anderson's hands clenched into fists. "If this is true, then we will fight to the end. We will not let anyone dictate our future. We will forge our own path." Zorath's expression darkened. "And that is the danger. You will fight, as you always have, without understanding the consequences. But this time, there is no world to conquer, no enemy to defeat. This time, you may face the end of everything. The words hung in the air. The alien fleet had made their warning clear, but Zorath knew it was only the beginning. Humanity had been faced with a harsh truth, but how they responded would determine their future. Would they accept the truth and begin the long road to change, or would they lash out, fighting to preserve the one thing that had always defined them: conflict? The alien commanders watched with unease as the humans struggled with the weight of the revelation. Some of them seemed to accept the truth, but others, those who believed in humanity's potential for greatness, refused to accept that their world had been shaped for destruction. But the aliens knew better. They had seen this before, species rejecting their fate, only to fall victim to it later. As the meeting ended, Zorath watched the humans depart, their minds filled with confusion, rage, and fear. The alien fleet remained in orbit, watching, waiting. They had done their part. Now, the fate of humanity was in their hands. The humans had been told the truth about their origins, and the question remained: would they rise above it? Could they change their fate? Or would they continue to fight, fueled by the very instincts that had been instilled in them since the beginning of time? Zorath couldn't answer that. All he could do was watch as humanity faced their greatest challenge. It was a challenge they might not be ready for. The question was no longer whether humanity would conquer the galaxy. It was whether they could conquer themselves. And if they couldn't, if they failed, the galaxy would soon know the consequences of creating a species built for war.